delicious way. Over the next 20 minutes, I'm going to share with you what I think is one of the most powerful strategies that I've ever come across, as well as many thousands of practitioners have come across to add value to the world, to get people happier, healthier, just generally enjoying life more and feeling as good as they possibly can. Little bit of background on me. So I have been in clinical practice now 29 and a half years. By my fifth year in clinical practice, I literally treated world champions from every major professional sport. So here are some of the people that I've worked with, some really fun cases. And I'll share later that, when I was treating these patients, they were as diligent as anybody you've ever seen in terms of being compliant with their protocol. But guess what? When their season was over, when their championship was over, when their career was over, basically they stopped doing all the things that got them to that level of greatness. But maybe we can share a strategy that will stick with people throughout life. By the way, I've also treated the other end of the spectrum. This was a woman's foot, day one that I saw her. She was scheduled to have it amputated 2 days later. That was her foot 2 weeks later. And what I'll tell you is that bodies respond to frequency, duration, intensity, quality, and timing of stimuli. So we want things that they can do often, that are effective and very safe. And we're going to share that. And by the way, this was the final outcome of the foot. She didn't have any surgery. Most people know that diabetes literally affects every cell of your body. So it wasn't just her foot that got better. And I like to use this as a metaphor for the whole body because it applies to the brain, it applies to the liver, it applies to the kidneys. If cells are dead, there's not much we can do about that. If cells are fine, there's not much we need to do about that. But it's the cells in between, those that are functional but not functioning, that if we can get them functioning better, well, then we can create a better brain, a better kidney, better hearts, better life. I have also taught seminars all over the world. This was one big stage that I was on. So over 10,000 hours. But here's one thing I know. People really don't like waiting. So this was a fun picture of a waiting room that was taken. But when people come into my waiting room, our staff offers them a cup of coffee. Would you like a cup of coffee or tea while you wait? Well, what you'll find out if you take us up on this offer is, in my experience, about 80% of people say, yeah, that would be really, really nice. You make them the coffee as they like it, they enjoy it, and suddenly their whole experience in your office gets better. And of course, that's what we're looking for. But we just don't offer them straight up coffee. We offer them coffee with benefits. So we have an herb in our coffee, which is known as reishi, also known as Ganoderma, over 2,000 peer-reviewed medical studies, 15 different types of cancer. It's proven to have direct action at either preventing metastasis or actually killing that cancer. It alkalizes the body. It's anti-inflammatory by over a dozen mechanisms. It's a proven immune booster. And in fact, that's a label claim that they allow in Canada. It's known to reverse brain plaquing. It increases stem cells. And this is just pretty much the tip of the iceberg of what we can accomplish with this. And what I tell people is, we want to keep it simple. You don't need a fancy coffee bar. You need a water boiler, some cups, and some samples. And by the way, I like our staff to offer patients the coffee and make it for them while they're there. But I'm going to take a little clinical transition here. And this is a graph or a chart that I've used at seminars for a long, long time. So the yellow line represents blood flow under heavy exercise conditions, or what would basically be more or less a fight or flight response. And it makes sense that the muscle would actually get a lot of blood flow. Notice that the heart's going to be about the same. But where does the muscle get the blood flow from? Well, it gets it from the liver, it gets it from the kidneys, and it gets it from the brain and other places as well. But the next question I ask people is, let's look at the green line, the body at rest. Who gets the most blood flow at rest? Well, it's the liver. Who's number two? The kidney. Who's number three? It's actually the brain. So think about that for a moment. Your body's highest priority at rest is actually detoxification, the organs of detoxification. So I've asked this question of students and patients and doctors all over the world. I said, hey, since your body's top priority at rest is to detox, maybe we should make that as our first intervention in helping you get better. So the simple phrase is, when in doubt, detox. So Ganoderma is phenomenal to support detox. So this was a very interesting case. You can look it up as the case of the frozen addicts. And this was a group of people that injected a synthetic heroin called MPTP in Southern California in the early 1980s. And the next day, they all woke up with Parkinson's disease. So the doctors, they were actually kind of smart. They said, oh, wow, that really sucks for you. You have Parkinson's, but guess what? We can actually take this drug, inject it into animals, and see if we can find some way to treat or reverse Parkinson's disease. So for over 30 years, medical science found no solution until they studied Ganoderma along with MPTP. So when they gave the animals Ganoderma and MPTP, they did not develop MPTP-induced Parkinson's. And I always include my references, so you can look that up and see for yourself that this is an absolutely powerful herb. So streptozotocin was a chemotherapy that was used to treat pancreatic cancer until they found out that it destroyed the insulin-producing cells of the pancreas, the beta cells of the islets of Langerhans. Similar study. So they thought, okay, we can induce type 1 diabetes. Maybe we can find a way to prevent it or reverse it. Well, Ganoderma is that herb that did it. It actually preserves the pancreatic function, even though the animal was poisoned with STZ. Some of you may have heard of carbon tetrachloride. That's what CCl4 is. It's known to be a horrible liver toxin, ultimately leads to liver sclerosis and liver failure. Well, when they gave animals carbon tetrachloride and Ganoderma, they did not progress to liver sclerosis and failure. So 3 of our major organ systems, brain, pancreas, liver, all being very protected. And how about pregnant moms or pregnant animals? So this was a mouse study. They gave the mice a horrible neural tube defect that would cause the offspring to either be born with no brain or a herniated brain. So these offspring were born dead or herniated spinal cord. Those offspring were born paralyzed in nearly 80% of the animals. But when they gave the same toxic dose in a single dose of Ganoderma, the toxic side effect reduced from 80% to 20%. The great news is it's perfectly safe for pregnancy. I actually recommend that moms take it even before they consider getting pregnant, because guess what? We found people that struggled with infertility that just by their body getting healthier, they were able to conceive, have a healthy pregnancy and healthy delivery. When I put people on a detox, I'll just simply ask them, do you prefer healthy coffee or no coffee? Well, you know what? I think I've had one person, believe it or not, one person in nearly 10 years of recommending this coffee that said, yeah, you know what? I think I'll just do without coffee this week. And I promise you, I've done thousands of detoxes. And this is one of my really fun and famous cases. So this beautiful woman's name is Hannah Cohen. That was her head just a few months before that. You can see she's getting her hair back. And her husband, Pete Cohen, but she had a massive convulsive seizure, just seemed to come out of nowhere. Took her to the hospital, put her under a scanner, saw that her brain was infiltrated with cancer. They couldn't get it all surgically. They said, you know what, we're very, very sorry. We don't have anything to offer you. You are going to die. Well, they ultimately came to Houston, Texas to see a guy named Stanislaw Brzezinski. I did the nutrition protocol for Hannah. And Hannah is cancer-free today and looking absolutely beautiful, enjoying life, absolutely no downside from any of this process. Full cognition, full balance, full beauty, full everything. So what happened with Hannah is very, very simple. She was doing a detox. I told her you have 2 choices, healthy coffee or no coffee. And she said, you know what, I'm not doing without my coffee. So I sent them back to London with a case of coffee. Neither Pete nor Hannah has missed a day with their coffee or tea since they switched over about 10 years ago. Pretty well-known guy, Sachin Patel. He and I met a couple of years ago, and he said, Bob, you know what? I would like to do a Zoom for the doctors that I mentor, and I want to share with them how powerful this coffee is. Well, Sachin Patel has built $1 million business basically launched on a single Zoom. So if you put this information in front of the right people who say, wow, this makes sense, and if I apply it right, it can make dollars as well, you can build a wonderful business. Later on, I gave a talk to his group of doctors entitled Functional Medicine in a Cup, and it is about this wonderful, healthy coffee. Another great story. This is Diane Solano and her son, Dylan. About 5 years ago, I was teaching a seminar, and Diane was one of my great students from nearly 20 years ago. And at break, she came up to me and she said, you know, can we have a conversation? And I said, well, of course, what's on your mind? And she said, well, a lot's changed since we last talked. I'm a mom now. I have a son. And I said, well, congratulations. She says, well, that's the great news. The not so great news is I took off 3 years from my clinical nutrition practice, and I'm now a single mom, and I'm wondering if you have any ideas of how I can increase my profitability fast. And so I asked Diane, I said, well, what do you think is easier, you know, sharing a cup of coffee or getting a new nutrition patient? And she laughed and she looked at me, she asked, you know, is that a serious question? And I said, it is a serious question. She says, well, obviously sharing a cup of coffee. And I said, well, let me share one with you. And she said, I don't drink coffee. And I said, well, how about tea? She said, well, I like tea. I asked her, do you want green or red? She says, green, please. So I made her a cup of green tea. And I can still remember her, you know, mixing it and sniffing it and tasting it. And she had this beautiful look on her face. She said, wow, this is really nice. And I said, yeah, it's really nice for your brain and body too. Let me share more. Well, guess what? Diane said, this makes perfect sense. And I'm going to use it to make a lot of dollars too. So she and her son, Dylan, have built a multi-million-dollar business all over the world as a team from home, inspiring single moms, and Dylan is inspiring kids everywhere. Emily Morrow is a phenomenal case. I introduced this coffee to her chiropractor about 4 years ago. Well, Dr. Todd Ozzie, Okachinsky is his last name, but we call him Ozzie. He wasn't really interested in building the business, but he was sharing this in his practice. Emily had a phenomenal health testimonial. She'll share it. She's actually doing a training tonight, but she had an autoimmune liver circumstance and other problems. Before seeing Dr. Ozzie, she was a collegiate athlete and fit and healthy and strong. And with the onset of this autoimmune liver issue, she had gained 30 pounds. She had horrible energy. Her skin wasn't very good. And what she realized was that Ganoderma in capsules and Ganoderma in coffee helped her tremendously. Well, just via Instagram with consistent posts about her passions, she now essentially does the equivalent of 2 Starbucks franchises from the comfort of her own phone. And she's well on a path to independent wealth at age 24. So we want to dot the I's and cross the T's. These are some of the quality certifications for our Ganoderma. Ours is grown with USDA certified organic methods, EcoCert, kosher, halal, etc. And we also have a patented process by which we extract the nutrient from the Ganoderma and put it in coffee and tea to get full benefit. That's one of a few patents that we have. But what I tell people is there's competitors out there now. You know, this company is now 11 years old. Companies like Four Sigmatic came out, and you know, we appreciate them because they have healthier coffee. But people that taste them side by side say, you know what, theirs tastes like mushroom soup, yours tastes like coffee. I'll take yours. And another quick transition, I mentioned that Ganoderma was really good for the brain. Here you'll see a bunch of PubMed studies that shows that Ganoderma is really good for GABA, calming, serotonin, happiness, acetylcholine, memory, and dopamine, which by the way is focus, joy, and fine motor control. But Ganoderma being good for all those aspects of the brain, an interesting neuroscientist was given a cup of Organo coffee, and this guy was with a company that created a technology known as NeuroTracker. And what he realized is that when he would consume Ganoderma coffee, there was a noticeable spike in his NeuroTracker performance. So he, started playing around with it. He said, okay, well, what happens if I drink 2 cups? Oh, my performance goes up. What if I drink 3? It goes up more. What if I don't drink any? It goes down. And then he said, you know what? I think we have a partnership here in the making. So they reached out to Organo and said, maybe we can do something together. You can look up NeuroTracker. It's proven to enhance brain health in pediatrics, elite athletes, and geriatrics. It's known to monitor concussion or brain injury recovery in pediatrics, elite athletes, and geriatrics. 53 published studies used by NASA, the military, elite sports teams, elite universities. Previously, a training session with NeuroTracker at a major clinic that had a license would cost $100 per session. But now NeuroTracker has a partnership with Organo, and guess what? You can do NeuroTracker in your own home, unlimited for $300 a year. And what I can tell you is we're now part of a study showing how Ganoderma enhances the benefits of the NeuroTracker. What's their claim to fame? A better brain in 90 minutes. How do you have access to it? You could go to a concussion clinic, pay $100 a session, or you could purchase it through an Organo partner, or you could become an Organo partner. I love this quote from Stephen Covey. He wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which was arguably the top business book of the last century. And here's what he said: if you want small improvements, change your behavior. If you want massive improvements, change your paradigm. Change the way you look at things. And as Wayne Dyer said, the things you look at change. So one thing that was critical in a paradigm shift for me was this movie, Rise of the Entrepreneur. They talked to more than 25 global experts in business and economics, including Bob Proctor, including Tony Robbins, including Sir Richard Branson, including Paul Zane Pilsner. And they all said, look, we are now in the gig economy. The world is looking for a side gig to try to make some more money. But here's the problem. Uber's a job, right? You work, you get paid. You don't work, you don't get paid. Airbnb's a job. You put people in your home, you don't know who they are. I think their screening process is pretty good, but then you got to clean up after them and other stuff like that. And by the way, what's a gig? A gig's a gig. You get paid when you do the gig. You don't get paid when the gig is over. But this business is a business that has tax advantages, partnerships, and leverage. And yeah, it's a path for many people to many, many millions, myself included. I'm very glad that I had that paradigm shift. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to that have had their economic world changed dramatically here in 2020. And it's often attributed to Confucius, although I try to see if it was really him that said it. It says it's a Chinese proverb, so I'll go with that. But here's the statement: the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. The best time to build this business would have been 11 years ago, or 10 or 9 or 8 or whatever, but the next best time is right now. I can't tell you how many people have come back and said, I don't know why I didn't take your advice the first time, but I'm ready now. Let's build. So in an hour, we've got Emily Morrow, or actually at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern time. She's going to train about how she created a multi-million-dollar business exclusively through Instagram. She consistently posts and shows people how to build. And you know what? I know that if you want to, you can build. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a moment. And if you want to physically raise your hand and wave, I've got the gallery view on now. Or if you, I know some people are on Facebook, it may be hard for them to ask a question. But while we're waiting for the questions to come in, I think I'm gonna call on Diane, since I see you on right there on my screen. Since I featured you as one of the greatest stories in the world, please share. What did you see that got your attention, and how did you build, and how has your life changed?
Thank you, Dr. Bob. Wow. Well, first of all, I have to say thank you. Big thank you, because, for many people on this call, you may or may not know, Dr. Bob is actually one of the top lecturers, in my opinion, like one of the top lecturers in the world. He was definitely a top lecturer for metagenics, if anybody's familiar and holds and shares the metagenics line. And I know this for a fact because it was sold out room after sold out room. And I have conversations all the time with Phil Capolino, who's in charge of coordinating the docs, where, Dr. Bob, you were sold out in every city that I know of. And big mentor of mine, thank you so much, because you really helped compress my practice and really become effective as a functional medicine doc. And ultimately what happened was that, I just got really scared because I became a single parent and I wasn't expecting that. And I just knew I couldn't scale my practice. I just knew I couldn't be home with my son. I just knew that model didn't work. And I worked with Hay House authors. I did a lot of webinars at that time. I mean, I worked with very big names, and I saw the work that goes on behind running online programs. You're always having to write blogs, reinvent yourself. And now it's so noisy and busy out there. I needed a guaranteed way to scale and actually make income, but still stay in the industry of health and wellness, because I love this industry. And I didn't know what that looked like, but it had to be risk-free because I had no capital to actually risk out there. And it was when you came to Toronto, you were lecturing for metagenics. And I remember this was about 6 years ago, out in around the Kitchener area. And I went to the hotel, and right on break, I actually pulled you aside and asked you for advice. And that's when you told me about Organo. Now, I'm not a coffee drinker, but I do know that I took people off of coffee for years, and it was the most unsuccessful strategy in all my practice. I mean, I had better luck getting people off of gluten and dairy. So this is when I found out about the product. Naturally, most practitioners want to feel congruent with the product, and that was great. And I started just recommending it. I think it really hit home when I had my first client, hairdresser of mine who had fibromyalgia, showed up in my office on a Friday. I had no product for her to run a detox, and I told her I would order it because I couldn't have all that, stored product sitting there. When I showed up in the salon 5 days later, her pain and her fibromyalgia was gone. Like, she literally looked at me and showed me her finger and said, "This is the only thing that hurts." And that's when I knew that the product actually was working. Now, I knew it in theory, but I think it's important that people actually have that testimonial with your circle, because that's when you really understand the power of the product. However, in my 20 years of practice, no one ever stopped me in the schoolyard for products. Like, I sold fish oils, protein powders, you name it. I sold it all, 20 years of practice. But this was the first time that I had people in the schoolyard, at home. Like, I had to carry product in the trunk of my car and at home, because people couldn't wait for their product. And I realized, wait a minute, coffee drinker never wants to stop. We actually have a product that's more cost effective than a McCafe, that physically feels better in people's guts. About 80% of my client base, friend base network couldn't go back to their old brands at all. And they were desperate when we sold out. So here's what I learned. We became the Apple of the coffee industry. And I knew from a business perspective that it was just a matter of time where people would want this product, but nobody knew about it yet. And that's why I actually partnered with you, Dr. Bob, because I knew that while I learned about the industry, if I partnered with you, because you're so successful in your practice, but I know everything you do so well. And it was that trust between having the right leadership and having a product that the masses wanted. that was key. So I just started working with practitioners because I knew the pain points of our brick and mortar practice. And that's where I met Dr. Paul at the Naturopathic College. I met him through Dr. Jake Grossman. You did an AK demo on the product. I know I went into Dr. Paul's office. We launched it. 2 weeks later, he had sticky notes on his boxes. People were reserving their product. Like, how many people here have customers calling, many reserving product and putting sticky notes on there because it's all pre-sold? Like, that's pretty intense for our industry. So I'm passionate about it because I knew that it worked, and I knew it was a guaranteed business model if I was willing to step out of my comfort zone. So fast forward now, it's been the best decision I've ever made business-wise, and we're just getting started. So thank you, Dr. Bob, for leading that. I know I went a little long, but I'm just so passionate. I also don't know what you shared at the beginning, so I'm just kind of sharing my story there.
You know what? Your story is worth repeating again and again and again and again and again. But I'm going to say the same thing. When I embraced this business model, right, which is direct sales, network marketing, I had plenty of what I consider fairly high level people look at me and say, Bob, have you lost your mind? You know, you're a professional, you've got an elite client base, you've got an international reputation. Why would you put it on the line to do this? And I said, I'm not putting it on the line to do this. This is a great product that the world needs. They have better quality control than you do, the top nutraceutical supplier in North America. So the data is there. They dotted the I's, they crossed the T's. And here's what I know, just what you said. People like it. People continue to do it. How many doses of fish oils have people missed over the years? Thousands. How many cups of coffee have they missed? Zero. And I don't see that changing. Now, I'm a big fan of total health, but I'm also a big fan of total wealth and total freedom. So I had to have the paradigm shift. So everybody who's on here, I'm going to give you a simple assignment. And it's going to take a little bit of investment in time, but it may be the best investment ever. Watch Rise of the Entrepreneur. We have a couple different groups. I can put it in the Why Organo Facebook group or the OG Family Worldwide. I'll put a link to it where you can watch it. But here's a fact. When you listen to expert after expert after expert saying, look, this business model's been around for 70 years. It's not going anywhere. It's in over 150 countries. It's here to stay. It's global. And guess what? You have a patented competitive advantage on a global market on things people do every single day. I interviewed a woman last night who Bob Proctor sat her down in his study and said, look, you're working your butt off. You can't keep doing that. You're killing yourself. Find a network marketing company that you resonate with and build it. Well, now she's one of our rising stars and great leaders, and so glad that she did. I'm going to wrap up with 4 simple questions. Some of you may know the name Jim Rohn. If you don't, he's actually the guy that launched Tony Robbins. Jim Rohn was a college dropout in the 1960s. In 6 years in this business model, he became a multi-millionaire. And by the way, their product was vitamins, right? We already talked about vitamins. People need them, but they need to be reminded to take them. Coffee has that huge advantage. But Jim Rohn would do a presentation like this, and he would finish with these 4 questions, and here they are. First question is why? Why did you take the time to join us tonight, whether on Zoom or on Facebook? There's so many other things you could do. Second question is the answer to the first. Why not? Why not learn about something that's a very easy way to enhance health? And if you choose, enhance wealth. Third question is why not you? Someone's going to say this makes sense. They'll be the next story we're going to celebrate. And then the final question is why not now? And here's the reality. The longer you wait to act on information, the least likely you are. If you've seen enough and you're ready to grow, well, then guess what? Reach out to us and we'll help you grow. If you need a little more belief, watch Rise of the Entrepreneur. In fact, even if you don't think you need more belief, watch it, because when you see these experts speak up again and again and again, you'll know that this is the real deal. So Antoinetta, brilliant idea. Thank you for suggesting that we do a special Zoom like this. And all of you, Thanks for sharing this time. We're going to wrap it up quick. If you want to join us for the 7 o'clock presentation with Miss Emily Morrow, we have that information in the groups, and I'll screen share real quick to put that back on the screen. Easy enough, meeting ID, the password is Empower, but you'll see how this 24-year-old powerhouse built a multi-million-dollar business with her only tool being Instagram. She uses great language, knows how to make great posts. So if you want to know that, join us for that as well. So I like to wrap up as I always do. I'm Dr. Bob Rakowski, absolutely knowing that we can all be happy, healthy, and successful. So good night all, and God bless.